So we are recording and we're being live streamed. It is, let's see, it's Thursday, August 25th, 2022. And we have the good fortune of being able to present a really fantastic piece of educational information here with Kevin Onazuk, with Alcova Mortgage. I'm John Polson with Mid-Atlantic Residential. Homes and Land by John is my brand. Welcome to this presentation this evening. Folks, we are glad to be able to bring this to you because our objective, Kevin and I work together as a mortgage lender and real estate professional to make sure that we can provide education and information for you so that you can make smart decisions when it comes to your real estate home buying process. Understanding that process is a key part of that. And actually, we want to make sure that you understand it's not as hard as you may think. In fact, it may be easier and more possible than you may realize. So there's information we're going to bring you tonight that hopefully will bring that to light and help you also to avoid making potentially some costly mistakes, if not also being able to save thousands of dollars in the process as you learn this and understand what to do and in some cases what not to do. So today we have a really fantastic presentation. We have we are live on Facebook. This is being recorded. This will be available for future viewing as well. So if you're here and you're able to join us, that is great. We are glad to have you on, and we're going to provide you with lots of terrific information. With no further ado, we will start sharing our little presentation so that you guys can actually begin to see what it is that we're going to be talking about. So our name of our program here tonight is called Home Buying Simplified. Thank you so much, Kevin, for bringing this forward so that we can share this. And Kevin is our mortgage expert. I'm here as your real estate pro, and we're bringing you this valuable information, education and knowledge and information so you can make smart choices, potentially save you thousands of dollars, and show you that you too can own a home now or potentially in the future. And let's see, I'm going to have to get back to my controls here.
Again, thanks for having me, John. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here. Really appreciate it. If you guys are on and you're actually watching this presentation, we definitely want you to learn, and we want you to be able to stay to the end so that we can offer you some potentially valuable gifts. If you're here and you're watching live, engage, ask questions. You should be able to use the chat feature. Maybe you can raise your hand. We will be getting into a lot of information, so we're going to try to cover a lot of information really fast. But if you're able to, go ahead and ask questions, and we'll try to filter them through the chat. And keep in mind that this is a learning environment. We want to make sure that we get through a lot of information so you can get all of this. We do have some freebies worth several $100s, but you have to stay to the end to know what they are and actually be able to get those. So really valuable stuff. To kick it off, one of the things that really seems to kind of keep people from making decisions at times is the confusion around the process. And buying a house is it's a huge decision. It's one of the biggest purchases you may ever make in your life. It's no surprise for buyers to feel stressed about that process. It can certainly be filled with some confusing information that you get in the news. And it's a rather complicated financial question that you're trying to answer. And then you have to figure out about getting a bank loan. Maybe you've never had to go through the process of obtaining a loan from a bank, and that can be kind of intimidating if you've never done it before, for sure. It can be pretty daunting to think about what you're about to borrow, possibly $250,000 or more to buy a home. And it could be certainly upwards of more than that, depending on what your price range is. Most of this stress, however, comes from feeling uninformed about how it all works. We're here to help you feel more empowered and in the know before you begin your home buying journey by walking you through each phase of the process, each phase of the purchase and the mortgage process. The biggest part of buying a home is how do you get the money to buy a home? Well, believe it or not, it's not as hard as you might think. And what you learn tonight might actually surprise you. So you can see all the different terms and information here. We'll go into a lot of that. Kevin is your expert, and he's here to help handle all of that. So what we're going to talk about tonight is certainly starting with the pre-approval process, which is something that your lender does with you to analyze your finances. We're going to talk about house hunting. We're going to talk about what's involved in making an offer once you find a house, other expenses that you may not know about right now called out-of-pocket expenses. Then there's home inspections and appraisals. Finally, you get into the title work and then closing on your house, and closing is when you actually take possession and get the keys to your home. And right now we're going to jump right into this. So Kevin, if you want to take over, I've got the pre-approval page up on our screen. You can see that, right?
Yep, I sure can. Yeah, in the home financing process, the first important step is the pre-approval. It's an initial approval that your buyer's agent, possibly John, will want to be able to go out, make an offer once you find something that you like. The pre-approval, it starts pretty simply with some application information. We can do that in person, over the phone. Lots of folks just apply online. Really simple information you would know off the top of your head. Who you are, where you live, where you work, an idea of how much money you have in the bank, an idea of how much money you make. Really simple stuff, and all of your answers don't have to be perfect up front. We're going to double check and triple check and verify everything as we go anyway. So I always tell folks, don't stress about the application process. As long as we spell your name right, get your social security number right, get your date of birth right, the rest of the stuff, we'll figure it out as we go. What a pre-approval does, it tells you three things. It tells you how much you can afford, so you know that you're shopping in a comfortable price range, what your monthly payments will be. As we go through and look at credit and affordability and such, we may say, hey, you qualify for a monthly payment of $4,000 a month. And you may say, whoa, that's crazy. I don't want to pay anything more than whatever you're comfortable with. And we'll talk about the amount necessary for down payment. And a lot of that has to do with picking a program, etc. There are programs with low down payment. There's even programs with no down payment requirements. The seller can pay some or all of your closing costs. Some folks want to make a larger down payment, and that opens up additional options for them and definitely can impact their monthly payments. So the two main things we're looking at the pre-approval process are credit and affordability. Awesome. So we do take a look at credit, and we review your credit report to include your credit score and overall credit rating. Credit doesn't have to be perfect. We want to see it's pretty good. In general, you borrowed some money, paid it back reasonably well. What's most significant is what's happened in the last year or two, because it's the best indicator of where you are now. And the second thing is affordability. We look at that application information, check out your income, and we look at your bills. And that's primarily just what shows up on credit, like credit cards, car loans, that type of thing. We're not looking for your cell phone. We're not looking for how much you spend on clothing or groceries. It's just the basics. Then we work with that within the mortgage guidelines and figure out what's an affordable monthly payment for you to qualify, then how that matches up with a home price. And then we work with the buyer to see, okay, do we want to maximize this, or is something maybe a little bit different, more in their comfort zone? So the pre-approval process, it sounds like a lot is happening, but it doesn't take long. Application information, whether it's over the phone, in person, online, we can do it in as little as 5 or 10 minutes. And if it's a rush, I can have your pre-approval done in a lot of cases in an hour or less. Sometimes it's a little longer. Sometimes we need some supporting documentation. But if you see something online today and you are excited and want to make an offer today, we can help you out.
That's awesome. Okay. So Kevin, what's a minimum credit score that somebody might need if they're going to apply for a mortgage in today's world?
That actually varies depending upon the lender. So different lenders have different minimum requirements. Different mortgage programs have different minimum requirements. As a whole, for industry-wide, as far as I see, it's pretty much a 580 credit score is the minimum credit score to get a mortgage. And of course, when you have lower credit scores, just because you're a 581 doesn't mean you're going to get approved. Right. It just means you've gotten over the minimum benchmark, and your costs are going to be higher at those lower credit scores.
Right. Expect a higher.
And you have to keep in mind the credit score that you see on wherever you pull your credit monitoring, is going to be different than the credit score we get in the mortgage world. There's a lot of different credit scoring models, so it can be a bit different.
Absolutely. So next are our pre-approval documents, some things that people need to turn in to get through the process.
Yeah. When working on a pre-approval and we issue the pre-approval letter, when the seller is considering your offer and they see that pre-approval letter, they typically want to know it's backed by documents. So if you say, hey, I have a job making X number of dollars a year or X number of dollars per hour, they want to know that we've actually checked that out. So we ask for some basic supporting documentation, primarily income and asset related at the beginning. So income, we're going to ask for basic things like a pay stub, a W-2, if you're self-employed or have rental income or something of that nature, maybe a tax return. Assets, we just want to see, basic checking, savings, stocks, bonds, investments, just to kind of see what funds you have available for down payment and closing costs and such. We don't really need it at pre-approval, but at some point we'll need a government ID, like a driver's license, passport, military ID. If you are obligated to pay any alimony, child support, anything of that nature, or even receive any of those things, we want to see a copy of the agreement. And the last item we have on here is your VA certificate of eligibility. That's just for veterans, a special mortgage program for veterans. And if they have it, that's great. If not, your lender can help the veteran obtain that very quickly and easily.
Very awesome. Very awesome. Very cool.
So as you can see, it's pretty simple stuff, and most of it you can get your hands on pretty quickly, especially in this technology age. I could go online and pull pretty much every one of these things within minutes.
So when you do so you got pre-approval, which is that's getting somebody through the underwriting process, so they are ready to buy that home. What do you need if you're going to do a pre-qualification for somebody? If we can jump into that real quick.
Yeah, pre-qualification and pre-approval are really about the same thing. The technical difference is the pre-approval means we've seen some of these documents. Yep. So pre-qualification is you call me, we get your basic application information, you tell me what you make, you tell me what you have in assets, and we can do a pre-qualification. An official pre-approval says that we've actually checked. If you say you have a job and you make this income, we've seen at least something. Even if we don't have every W-2, even if we don't have every single document, we've at least seen something to confirm what you're saying is true and correct.
There's a powerful part of being pre-approved, and being pre-approved, going through this process, you got to remember that somebody else's money. So you got to prove who you are and then prove that you have the ability to repay. And that's what all these documents are there for, so that that lender can have that full confidence of being able to provide you with, that money, because that money is going to be what you use to actually buy the home that you're looking to purchase. And there's
and the seller wants to be confident, if they accept your offer, that the pre-approval is strong, that you will have the funds to complete the purchase.
So going through this process is, it sounds a little daunting because there's a lot of stuff that you got to provide here, but it's not that much. I mean, it's necessary, but once you've gone through this, it is such a powerful tool, because now you become what amounts to a cash buyer. You're still using the bank's money, but now you are approved. That money is sitting there and it is ready for you to find the home that you're ready to buy. And then once you find it, you can go to that seller through the contract process and be in a powerful position to make sure that you have the funding. Now the home just has to qualify. So good stuff, really good stuff. All right, next slide, we've got the house hunting process. And this is, once you've gotten that pre-approval, once you've gotten with your lender and you understand the financials, you've made your calculations to determine what monthly payment you can afford, which will then help you determine how much of a home you can afford. There's a careful part of that process that involves some real planning. Just because you can qualify based on your income at the top end, for instance, maybe you can qualify for a $350,000 home, and that's the top end of the limit. It's usually not advised to reach to that level or to try to shop for homes that are at that price point. We want to make sure that when you buy a home that you're going to have a comfort level with what you buy and that you are financially capable to be able to grow with the process of that home, because there's other costs associated with home ownership as well. But what you want to start with now, once you're pre-approved, is working with your buyer's agent. There's two things that are really important to understand when it comes to working with a real estate agent, is that there's two types of real estate agents. The first that we want to talk about right now is your buyer's agent. This is the person that's going to be working for you on your behalf in the home buying process. Part of their job is to help you find the home, but the other part of their job is to really negotiate on your behalf and walk you through that home buying process. So you're actually not paying your agent. Typically, the agent's commission, which is what they earn for walking you through this home buying process, is paid by the seller. Now, you're going to get information from homes that are available on the market through your real estate agent, but it's not just that, and it's not just shopping on Zillow. We have so many tools available now. There's something else that you should consider, and that is what other tools your agent may have, technology and systems that give you a competitive edge. So the other type of agent that you might encounter in this process is the listing agent. Listing is the actual home seller's real estate agent. The listing agent has a contract with that seller. It is their job to look out for that seller's best interest. Their job is to sell that home and to make sure they get the best purchase price for that seller, which means usually the highest price. And that's often what it comes down to. So if you're out there in the market and you're shopping for homes, make sure that you're using a buyer's agent to protect your own interest. And when you encounter a listing agent at a home, you might go to an open house. Make sure to let that listing agent know you have a buyer's agent. That way, he's not going to pressure you to provide information that could potentially put you in a poor negotiating position, and it allows you to actually utilize the skills and knowledge of your buyer's agent to protect your interest along the course of that transaction. So the next slide is about, why do we buy a home? Why are we going to buy a home? There's a lot of reasons that can actually be the decision that you arrive at. And there's three primary reasons that people buy houses. Whether you rent or buy, whether you rent or whether you buy, you pay for the space you occupy. Love that statement, and it just rings so true. I actually bought my first home through a very similar process to what you may be going through right now, by learning from a loan officer and a real estate agent who are presenting a very similar program to this right here today. My first home I purchased back in 1998. And I remember coming to a class like this, and it was in probably the fall of 1997. And I had no idea that I might be able to buy a home. We were out of college. We had new jobs. My wife and I were not really sure, we were renting at that time, and we just were kind of resolved to being able to pay rent. We had a nice little place that we were renting, but you know what? We had dreams. We had dreams of doing more, of being able to grow. We were young and we were out of college, and now things were starting to happen for us. And those dreams are really powerful, particularly the American dream of home ownership. That's a very powerful dream. Having control of your space. You can only really control what you own. What could be more important to control than where we live? That's an important part of a reason to buy a home. And then needs. Our needs change as we grow. Our needs change. Sometimes maybe we get a new job and you're making a little bit more money. Maybe your family is growing, so it's time to upsize. You need more space. Maybe you need a yard for your dog to run or the kids. Maybe you've got a larger home and you need to downsize. There's other reasons that maybe buying a smaller home is actually the right thing to do. Transitions in life happen, job changes, and of course, as we talked about, better incomes. Making the offer. And let's see. So there's a number of procedures that we're going to go through when we are actually getting to that point. You found a home that you really, really like. Now's where your buyer agent really goes to work for you on your behalf. Offers on a home are carefully structured, and there's a number of different elements that can be negotiated. And one thing I like to remind my buyers, and often have to remind your sellers, is that basically everything can be negotiated in a real estate purchase contract. Offers themselves, when it comes to the purchase price, are essentially based on whatever the comparables are in that area. Comparables are comparable sales. Comparable sales are those transactions that have actually closed. There can be all kinds of properties that are for sale on the market. However, if they haven't sold, then they're not a comparable. A comparable is something that's actually sold in the marketplace. That tells us where the market is and what a home actually has for value, because somebody's actually made that purchase. A home is actually worth what someone is willing to pay for it. And we only know that based on what is actually sold. We also make that offer based on the condition of that home, whether or not it's in pristine condition, or maybe it has some defects that need to be repaired. You got to take that into consideration. How long it's been on the market, what kind of financing terms may be available, and what kind of situation the seller may be facing. You may, if you're out there on your own, it's very difficult to understand or get to know what a seller's motivation is, but that's part of your real estate agent's job, is to understand what those types of things are. We want to put you in the best position so that you can negotiate as good a deal that works the best as possible for you, so that your interests are protected. Rely on your realtor and be prepared to negotiate. And next, we've got the once you've made that contract and you're ready to buy that home and you want to make that offer, we have to collect what's called an earnest money deposit. That earnest money deposit really is a commitment on your part to tell the seller that you really want to make this transaction work. A contract is really only as good as the ink that's written to write it, but it's also based on that person that's making that transaction. So you're making a gesture to the seller by making an earnest money deposit. And that dollar amount can vary depending on the type of home it is, depending on what the market conditions are, but it can usually be in the range from $500 maybe to upwards. I just did a contract this week that had a $5,000 earnest money deposit. That doesn't have to happen with every contract, but there are numbers that work. So again, that's something that you work out with your real estate agent. It keeps you from, it shows that you're committed to the transaction, shows that you're not just going to back out. It helps fund the down payment. That money is a deposit, so it actually applies to the purchase price at closing, and therefore your closing costs are offset by the amount of money that you bring in with that earnest money deposit. But that's a very important part of securing the transaction. It can really make you look really good. If you only have a few $100s to put into an earnest money deposit, or that's all you're willing to put in, it may cause a little bit of concern for the seller that there's not enough commitment or ability to purchase. But a higher earnest money deposit certainly shows that commitment, shows the financial capability, and those are the couple of considerations to keep in mind. So here we have a number of different loan options. Kevin has been doing this for such a long time, and he knows this market. He knows when you're working to buy a home, all the different programs that he's going to be able to have available for you. And there's all kinds of options that are available. And I want to turn it right over to Kevin so that he can begin to explain some of what those programs are. And there's a lot to talk about here, Kevin. So I know we could probably talk forever, but I'll let you kind of take over.
Oh yeah, I love mortgages. I could talk about them all night, and it's not a one size fits all type of thing. We're not going to get into a whole lot of detail here, just some general overview information, just to let you know there's a lot of really exciting options out there for folks. And no matter what you're looking to do, and no matter what your situation is, there's going to be a best program for you. And we'll give you some options. We'll look at different down payments, different programs to see what's most affordable and the best fit for you. So the first one, this fella here says, my credit is good and I have a down payment. So this fella's probably going to be looking at a conventional mortgage. Conventional mortgages backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We may have heard about those. They are semi-government agencies, and they have some pretty nice benefits. They are often used by folks who have excellent credit, larger down payments. So maybe not so much by first-time buyers, but sometimes they do have programs with down payment options as low as 3% of the purchase price. And the nice thing with conventional loans is they can be used for all occupancy types. So that's whether you're buying a house to live in, we call that your primary residence, or a second home or an investment property. So conventional loans, you cover the whole gambit, but again, well-qualified folks, and typically they make the most sense with larger down payments. Next, let's say you're looking for a home in a rural community. There is a program through the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, same people that certify our beef in the grocery store. They have a mortgage program available. There is no down payment required. Their goal is to help promote affordable housing in rural areas. Now, rural doesn't have to be out in the middle of nowhere. We are right now chatting in the Williamsburg area. So if you are in the city of Hampton or Newport News or city of Williamsburg, not going to qualify as rural, but not far out of that, you have lots of opportunities. Within the city of Richmond, not rural, but once you get out a little bit past the basic suburbs, you've got a lot of rural areas. So we can give you a map and you can kind of take a look if it's a program that you want. And this isn't for buying a farm. It's not for going out and buying 20 acres. It's for a reasonable home to promote affordable home ownership. Great low monthly payments, no down payment requirements. Seller can pay all of your closing costs. So if you're looking for a home that qualifies in a rural area, don't want to put a lot of money out of pocket, this one's a tough to beat. It's pretty excellent. Next one, John. This lady here is searching for a low down payment option. One of the great low down payment options, and one very frequently used by first-time buyers, is the FHA loan. That's the Federal Housing Administration, Department of Housing and Urban Development, another government-backed program. All good, safe, secure mortgages. They require a minimum down payment of 3.5% of the purchase price. That down payment can be a gift. Relative, employer, a qualified individual can gift you the money for down payment. And here in Virginia, we actually have Virginia Housing Down Payment Assistance Grant Funds. So first-time buyers here in Virginia may qualify for grant funds to cover most of that down payment, all but 1%. So you can have a purchase with only 1% out of pocket using an FHA loan for a first-time buyer here in Virginia. FHA allows for less than perfect credit qualifications. So if you've had some credit problems or issues in the past, then the FHA is the most flexible for credit, for affordability. It will approve a lot of folks that a conventional mortgage will not. This is only for a primary residence. You can't do investment properties, etc. But FHA loan is a fantastic, affordable loan and very friendly towards first-time buyers.
So Kevin, can we define what a first-time home buyer is? We've talked about this before on other meetings, but what does that mean, a first-time home buyer?
Well, you would think it'd be pretty obvious, but sometimes there can be layers to the onion. A first-time buyer, we define that as someone who has not owned a primary residence in the last 3 years. So if you owned a home before and sold it 4 years ago, you are a born-again first-time home buyer.
Born-again first-time home buyer. That is an interesting perspective. So a lot of people don't know that the FHA loan exists and that they might qualify for it with such a low down payment option. And that's just something I like to point out, because sometimes people are thinking they got to have 20% down in order to buy a home. And at $350,000, how am I going to come up with $70,000? You don't have to have $70,000 to buy a home. You can buy a home with a $350,000 home with about $12,000, $13,000 in your bank account.
Yeah,
or less.
Absolutely. Or less. Yeah. If you got grant funds, that's 1%. So you're looking at what, $3,500 for down payment, and your seller can help with closing costs. And just to reiterate, the FHA mortgage doesn't require you to be a first-time buyer. That's just for some of the grants and incentives.
Gotcha. Right. Okay. And next, we have this beautiful program that's available for the people who have served our country, and even more benefits here.
We do. Yeah. For someone that has served in the military, the Veterans Administration offers the VA mortgage program. So anybody that is active duty, even folks who have guard and reserve duty after a certain amount of time in, retired, the VA mortgage program, again, is one that's really tough to beat. It does not require any down payment, and they can make a down payment, just not required. There is no mortgage insurance. What's mortgage insurance? It's basically foreclosure insurance.
Right.
So with some of the mortgage programs, you're paying some sort of additional cost with your monthly payment. It protects the lender in case something goes wrong. Long story short, it just makes the monthly payment cheaper on a VA mortgage. It's available for a primary residence for a veteran. Seller can pay all the closing costs, very low fixed rate. If a veteran comes, someone who is eligible for a VA mortgage, it's almost impossible to beat it with any other mortgage program, but it's just for veterans who can buy with the veteran or active duty person, or the veteran and spouse. So their spouse or have to be married, or two qualified veterans. So if two veterans want to purchase together that aren't married, they can do that. And then the final thing would be a surviving spouse. So if a military member was killed in the line of service, their spouse, surviving spouse, can use their VA benefits.
That's a tremendous benefit, and I hope that veterans understand and know that this is available to them as they kind of go through and get to that home buying process. But probably not everybody does, and it is a huge benefit. It's a huge advantage. This also applies to just a side note here. We're talking about buying a single family homes, but there's a lot of benefit for veterans, and these other loan programs can be used for this as well. But buying a home in a potentially multifamily environment where you have up to 4 units and you live in one of those units, a VA loan can be used to purchase a home like that, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
So
and these are the 4 main mortgage programs. There's other ancillary programs, but these are the most common. We're going to go through all of this when we do the application and pre-approval process. We're going to look at the options that are available and work to find the best fit for what's most important to you. Is it low down payment? Is it lower monthly payment? Is it knowing that your payment's not going to change ever? Really, it's what is most important to you. We can work to tailor the mortgage program to be the best fit.
So next up is a little bit of alphabet soup.
Yeah, we have your PITI. So really, this is your monthly payment. So we call it the PITI. That's kind of our acronym. It stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It's letting you know what's going to make up your mortgage payment. So when you make your mortgage payment each month, it goes to several things. First is principal. So that's paying down the balance. So let's say you borrow $100,000. That's the principal that you borrowed, the principal balance. And when you make your mortgage payment, a little bit goes to that each month. You pay interest. That is the cost of getting any loan or financing. You're going to pay interest on it. So you cover the interest that's due that month. And then with almost all mortgages, we include your real estate taxes and homeowners insurance cost in there. Your taxes are set by the locality, the city or county. They're paid once or twice a year, but we collect a little bit each month and we disperse that for you on your behalf just to make sure they're getting paid. Homeowners insurance, that's the insurance that protects your house against, fire, flood, whatever it may be. And you get to pick it. So you pick whatever homeowners insurance company you like, you set up coverage, and then that is included in your mortgage payment. We collect a little bit each month and pay it for you when it's due each year. For almost all of the mortgage programs, you have to have the taxes and insurance in your payment just because we want to make sure that they're getting paid in a timely manner. Your insurance stays into effect. So that's what typically goes into your mortgage payment. Now, you may have some other housing costs. There may be a homeowners association where you purchase, or a condo fee. Those are paid separately, not part of your monthly mortgage payment. But definitely still something to consider.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're looking at all of that. We talked about in the pre-approval process. One of the things we're looking at is affordability, and we calculate it using this thing called the debt to income ratio. So we take your monthly debts. So that is credit cards, car loans, student loans, plus the anticipated new mortgage payment. And we divide that by your gross monthly income. So we're looking for the before taxes amount, where they take out taxes and insurance and all that. And we want that to be affordable. And we're looking ideally for your mortgage payment to be about a third of your gross monthly income or less. Very flexible. And your total debts, total obligations, a goal of about 45% of your gross monthly income. But again, that can go higher, especially if you say excellent credit, then we can be more aggressive on things like this. That's all part of the pre-approval process that we work through with everybody that reaches out and talks about purchasing a home.
So next are a couple of some out-of-pocket expenses. Once you've gone through and done your mortgage application and you're ready to actually get moving on this transaction, you got a house that's under contract, and now we're a little bit further along in the process. We've locked that home up for you so that this is going to be the home that you're hopefully going to be able to buy. You've got the mortgage in place, you made the contract. Now it's time to get to the next phase of learning about that house. Now we're going to disclose. We're actually going to do what's called our due diligence phase of the process, and we're going to schedule a home inspection. Now, a home inspection is, in fact, I just did one the other day on a home in Yorktown. This is what allows you to really understand everything about that home. When you walk through a home, you're going to be wowed by how it looks. You're going to be impressed by the furniture that's in there. You may not be able to see all the little nuts and bolts and nitty-gritty details of that home. A home inspection allows so much more just education and learning about everything about that home. So you're able to buy with confidence. So if there are any major defects that are innate within that home, your home inspector is going to be able to discover those. You wouldn't be able to find these on your own, but a home inspector, and today this is evolved to a process now where home inspectors are licensed and they are very well educated. So there are good home inspectors and I work with several home inspectors that I have a really good rapport with, and I know what their skill sets are and how they communicate, but they are typically very well educated on home construction. They may not be builders, but they're going to know what they're looking at with every little detail. So they're going to look into the crawl space, places you can't get to. They're going to look in the attic, places you can't get to and probably don't want to go to. They're going to look at all the faucets, the drains, the sinks, the outlets. Every outlet in the home is going to get checked. Every faucet in the home is going to get checked. Every toilet is going to get flushed. All the hoses are going to be looked at. Your HVAC is going to be looked at. And when I say HVAC, it's your HVAC, your heating, air conditioning, so forth. The roof, they're going to look at the roof. They're going to look at the gutters. They're going to look at the trim, the soffits, everything on that home is going to get a very detailed, thorough inspection. And that's what your home inspector is there for. It's about a $500 investment. It is 100% worth it. I go on every one of my home inspections with my buyers because I learn a lot about that home, and the buyer learns. So you learn so much about that house. It's absolutely amazing. Next up, I'll let Kevin talk a little bit more about the appraisal part.
Yeah, so you're coming through the process. You've made your deposit on the purchase contract, your earnest money deposit. For first-time buyers, that's really much more than 500 to 1,000. But again, as John said, you'll make that as part of your negotiation. You paid for your home inspection. That's about $500. Next comes the appraisal. We typically don't start this till you're past the home inspection, just to make sure that goes well. Over the past couple of years, a lot of folks, in being aggressive in trying to purchase a home, have waived the home inspection. And we've heard some post-closing nightmares. So it is definitely good to have a pro in there looking around. And assuming all of that goes well, we order the appraisal. And that's different from the home inspection. Home inspection is for your protection. looking at, as John said, checking everything, making sure that everything is working order, the structure's good. An appraiser goes out on behalf of the lender. So as a lender, there's certain criteria we want to know about the house. First is valuation. So the appraiser is going to go out, take a look at the house, and do a lot of what your buyer's agent did at the beginning. They're going to count rooms. They're going to look at square footage of the house. They're going to look at other recent sales. We call them comps or comparable sales. And they come up with their estimated market value of what the house is worth. And we want to see that's at least what you're paying for it. So if your purchase price is $200,000, we want to see that the house is valued at $200,000 or more based on other recent sales in the neighborhood. If it comes in lower, doesn't mean everything is falling apart. That's where your buyer's agent comes in and renegotiation starts to happen. The other thing on the appraisal is condition. The appraiser is going to look at the obvious. Walk through, and if they see a hole in the ceiling and it's not a skylight, it's not supposed to be there, they're going to note that. If they walk through a bathroom and the fixtures are missing, there's no toilet or bathtub, they're going to note that. The most common things we see are like very obvious wood rot, broken windows, peeling paint. Those are probably the three main things that we see most often that become appraisal condition issues. But the appraiser's going out there just looking at what's obvious, and they're making sure that it meets the mortgage requirements.
Right.
So each mortgage program has minimum property requirements. All we're worried about is it doesn't meet the minimum property requirements for the mortgage, and is the house worth what you're paying for it? Very different from the home inspection, and the inspection the appraiser does way less thorough.
Yeah. Now, I kind of love to point out, an appraisal is a very different animal than an assessment. And that's an important thing to understand. And it's not a zestimate. An appraisal is a very accurate, and that's why the lender actually uses the lender is in control of this process. The buyer doesn't order it, the seller doesn't order it, the agent has nothing to do with it. It is ordered by the bank, because again, the bank is providing that money. They're given that $250,000 or $500,000 or however much they're going to be lending on that house. They want to know from an independent person that's qualified to look at all those details, is that home worth what we're going to be lending on it? And that's an important part of that. The other thing I forgot to kind of mention is that there is a cost to the home inspection, but if something comes up in a home inspection, I don't think I've ever had a home purchase go through contract and home inspection where a home inspector didn't find some little thing that was, even on the most perfect of houses, that there's something that's going to show up on that home inspection report. So it's not something to be afraid of. There's a lot of systems. There are a lot of complex systems that are built into the house. And even the most perfect house, even the newest of houses, can have little things that'll show up on a home inspection report. But if there's something that's majorly significant that gets discovered in that process, two things can happen. It can help renegotiate the price if it's a major concern and it's going to cost you a lot of money that you hadn't expected. And the other option is we can terminate the contract. This is a very big contingency in most contracts. Now, we have had this situation over the last couple of years where home inspections, like as you mentioned, we've had to actually, in order to simply get to a secure contract by competing with all these other buyers that have been in the market, it's been tough on buyers. They've had to waive home inspections and be willing to take on whatever the condition of that house is, even if it has a mechanical defect of some kind. I always make sure that my home buyers get a home inspection anyway, even if we don't use it as a contingency to renegotiate on price. We want to make sure that you know what you're getting, and you have a right to do that. Not only do you have a right, you really kind of have a personal obligation to know what it is that you're buying, because Virginia is a buyer beware state, but it is also your right to protect yourself with a home inspection. That's just like nice thing I want to point out.
Yeah, and another option with the home inspection is the seller can fix it.
Yeah, absolutely right. We can ask for
Yeah.
those repairs. That often happens, even when it's not being negotiated. Oftentimes, if there's something that's an issue, maybe a safety item comes up on a house, or maybe there's an item, had it happen a couple times, we weren't going to negotiate on it. But once we discovered that there was a minor issue with the house, seller went ahead and fixed it because they didn't want to have that problem on their own house. They didn't know about it. So sometimes it'll reveal something that the seller didn't realize. And if they don't fix it, it's causing a problem right away. And it's good to go ahead and have that fixed. So maybe a roof leak of some kind, maybe a storm came through, they didn't know about it, ripped off some shingles. Hey, guess what? You got some shingles missing on your house. You might want to get somebody up there to fix that because you got three or 4 weeks before closing. If there's other problems that happen, the whole deal could fall apart. So most sellers are pretty reasonable when it comes to at least certain things. So each case, you got to take it on a case by case basis.
And one thing I didn't mention on the appraisal, since we're talking about out-of-pocket expenses, that is paid up front at the time of the appraisal order, typically runs $500 to $600. And that's because the appraiser wants to get paid regardless of what their report says. Right. So if the value comes in low, or there's condition issues, or there's some reason the purchase doesn't go forward, they did their work to protect you and to protect the lender. That's why we have to collect payment upfront for those reports. And with the appraisal, if there are condition issues, the seller has to fix those for it to move forward. Home inspections between you and the seller, the appraisal, the lender says, okay, this has to meet minimum guidelines for this program. And the appraiser is the one that makes that determination.
Absolutely. So between those two out-of-pocket expenses, we're looking at about $1,000 of out-of-pocket expenses that you're going to have in your bank account. And the lender's going to make sure they need to see that money in your bank account when you're getting approved for the loan. It's all part of the approval process. You got to be able to show that you've got enough money to cover these out-of-pocket expenses before you go forward with the loan. So that's another thing, is understand your mortgage broker, Kevin, is going to be looking out for you as well. He's not going to put you in a situation where you're committing to something that just is not going to work for you financially. In fact, Kevin's going to guide you. I'm going to do the same on my part, but I don't. The one thing that the lender has to do is the lender really gets knee deep. I mean, you get really deep. I used to kind of think of it and say, your real estate agent makes a really close relationship with you, but your mortgage broker, he has to get inside your underwear drawer. You really kind of have to be able to look at everything that's going on in there. And it is a good relationship, but he's going to look out for your interest too. He's not going to put you in a situation where you're not going to be able to afford what's coming next. So that's, even though it sounds like this is costly, this is for your benefit.
Absolutely. And speaking of what's next, the home loan process, it's not scary. It's really just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. When we have our approval, there's just certain documentation that we need, and we already talked about that. So we get everything together and it's reviewed by an underwriter. So that is a person that basically looks and says, yes, this meets guidelines for income and assets, etc. Now, most loans approved these days are through automated underwriting, a computerized system, which is even more fair. All it looks is the details and determines likelihood of repayment, completely fair and equitable to all applicants, and it approves people at a much higher rate than a traditional old school underwriter would. From your side, all you know is that we're requesting additional documentation. We're going to ask for documentation up front. You're going to give it to us. We're going to look at it. We're going to ask for more. You're going to say, I already gave you that. Well, you did, but it's not exactly what we needed. We need updates, etc. The underwriter is going to look at it, ask for more stuff. Whether you're perfect credit or less than perfect credit, perfect buyer, less than perfect buyer, it's just part of the process, but it's not scary. It's always stuff that is very reasonable to obtain. We look at monthly. Go ahead.
So I always say, you want that lender's money. That lender is generously offering at a very low interest rate a particularly large sum of money so that you can buy this house. It's okay to provide most of this stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? Your loan officer and their partner who is a processor, we don't want to do all this either. It's just meeting the mortgage guidelines. guidelines. Each mortgage loan program has different guidelines and requirements. We just have to meet their requirements. Hey, if it was up to us, we'd give you the money with no questions asked. We'd be super happy to do that. As we get started in the process, we lock in your interest rate, which sets your interest rate over the life of the loan. In most cases, it's a fixed rate throughout the life of the loan. There's some other options available, and we order the title work. So we reach out to a title company or real estate attorney. They're going to go to the courthouse, make sure that the seller who is selling you the property actually owns the property, making sure that if there's any mortgages or liens, they get paid off. So when you purchase the house, it's actually yours. It's legitimate, and there's no liens, mortgages, anything left on the property. And they even give you something called title insurance that if anything were to pop up in the future, it will take care of those items.
Now, there's difference between title insurance for the lender and then there's title insurance for the buyer. You always have an opportunity to purchase your own buyer's or owner's title insurance policy as well. Your closing agent will talk to you about that when you get to closing as well. And let's see. So now we're back up. Now we're over into the closing costs, actually getting to closing day.
Yeah, so we talked about your upfront costs. These are before closing day, your earnest money deposit, home inspection, and appraisal fee. And as we talked about, they're not overwhelming. You know, between all of that, most folks maybe about $2,000. But you do have to be prepared for that. Then on closing day, there are costs associated with closing the mortgage. You pay, we talked about that title company or real estate attorney. They've got costs and fees for doing the closing, for issuing that title insurance, for going to the courthouse to verify that you are getting free and clear title. There are some costs to the lender. The ones you'll typically see with the lender might be a processing or an underwriting or an origination fee. Those are common, but not overwhelmingly large costs. The lender fees are actually amongst the smallest in the process. Homeowners insurance, you have to pay your first year's homeowners insurance up front, set up your escrows for taxes and insurance. That's where we just put a little bit away in the pot. So when your payments come due for taxes and insurance, there's enough in there to cover it. Interest from the day you close to the end of that month. So if you close on the 20th of the month and there's 30 days in the month, you pay just 10 days of interest for when you're living in the house and using the mortgage for 10 days. That's usually a very low cost. In general, closing costs average about 3% of your purchase price once you roll in all of those things. Now, that can vary depending upon where the home is located. It can vary based on purchase price. You know, some of the costs don't change regardless of your purchase price. So, you know, be prepared, you know, anywhere from 3 to 4% probably at most in most cases. And the seller can help with that. The seller can pay some or all of your closing costs. There are limits on some of the mortgage programs. Again, you know, we work through that at the pre-approval process and discussion, making sure we have you in the program that's the best fit. So that would be a conversation to have then with your buyer's agent in making an offer. If you need the seller to help pay some of your closing costs, that's part of your offer negotiations with the seller.
Comes back to something that we mentioned earlier in the presentation, that during a home purchase contract writing and that offer process, everything really becomes negotiable. And you'd be surprised. We negotiate on washers and dryers. We negotiate on refrigerators in a garage. We also negotiate when it comes to seller contribution to closing costs. So again, it's been a little bit of a it's been definitely sided on the side of the seller for the last couple of years. We're in a transitioning market where we're able to negotiate better on the behalf of the buyer, and we're going to get to a situation. I don't want to say situation. We're going to get to a point in time where sellers will again be helping and contributing by paying some of the buyer's closing costs. It helps you be able to close on that house without having to bring a lot of money to closing. And it can be very beneficial. So yeah, it's something that is a case-by-case basis, but definitely something that's part of that negotiation. Once you get through all this and you've done your mortgage and you've gotten through your home inspection, we've gotten the result of the appraisal, the bank has given their final approval, The title company has completed all their process. Then we've got what's called, we've got your CD, you've got your HUD statement, which is right there in front of you. You know how much you're going to be bringing to closing. You will be notified by your title company and your closing agent will let you know how the amount of the check that you're going to bring to closing. So you're going to be getting the money from the bank, and that's going to be wired to the title company. It's going to be coming into for the closing, which is going to be for the purchase price of the home, less whatever closing costs, down payment, and fees are associated with the closing. So that check amount is something that you will be notified, and it'll have to come in the form of typically a cashier's check from your bank. So that is something you can't just bring a personal checkbook to do that. You'll have to know ahead of time what that is. But you'll bring that amount of money to closing. You'll review that closing packet. You'll get all the documents. You'll see all the disclosures, everything. Most of the documents you sign at closing are actually lender docs. A cash closing is a much simpler process, and you may never get to that where you're going to have a cash transaction, but there's a lot of loan documents. You're going to sign your loan application again, and there's going to be other documents associated with the loan that you're going to sign, and there's a deed of trust and so forth. Seller then signs the deed. Once they acknowledge that they're being paid, oftentimes the seller and buyer never really meet at closing. It used to be that they would sit at the same table. The buyer would sign their documents, the seller would sign their documents, the money would transfer from the bank, there'd be a check that gets transferred, and then the agent would hand the keys right over to the buyer right there at closing. And there's this kind of image that that's what happens. Rarely today, in fact, I'll just say rarely today, do you have a buyer and a seller sitting at a table at the same time signing documents. Normally it's done completely separately. Oftentimes the buyer has a title company that's separate from the seller's title company. There was some insurance stuff earlier this year that caused confusion to that, but buyers have their own closing agent, sellers have their own closing agent. Those two closing agents then coordinate the documentation and paperwork. And then you actually, once you've signed everything, the deed is then conveyed, and it's actually that ownership of that deed, the name and the title, all the documentation associated with the transaction coming from the bank allows the title to then convey to you. With that title, you actually then get ownership and control of the property, which is then is when you actually get your keys. So there's a little bit of a formal process that goes through that. Typically, you get the keys to the house once you complete your closing. Technically, you get possession of the house when your deed is recorded at the courthouse. So there's a very legal process that has to happen. And part of that's because there's liability that's still involved. Until that deed actually records, technically the seller still owns it. And there's a liability situation that occurs if you take possession of a home that you don't own yet. But let the title companies sort all that stuff out. Just be prepared that when you go to closing, you may have to wait a little bit. You're going to wait a little while until your title company lets you know that all the funds have transferred and your deed has been processed. Usually it happens the same day of closing. So then everything gets recorded at the courthouse, and then it becomes absolutely official. It's official when it's recorded at the courthouse, and now you own your new home.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. As you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, I probably haven't seen buyers and sellers together at a closing table for at least 20 years. And the only exception is when I bought a house a few years ago. The seller was there. I was like, why is the seller here? Like, this is just unusual. So yeah, because I think it caused friction in some cases. You know, sometimes if the process had last minute questions, they've learned it's better just that everybody does their own thing. And when you're at that closing, you want it to be all happy. You want to be excited, get your little cramp in your hand from signing papers, but just be super excited to get your keys and get in your new home.
Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that the title company, I tell you what, it's kind of interesting to see. Sometimes buyers don't need to know all that. We're sharing this information with you as professionals. We're involved in this process, sometimes a little bit more intimately than we care to be. but it's part of our job is to actually ensure that this transaction has all of these little things that are moving around, and Kevin has to turn it over and it has to go to the title company to get most of their stuff done with the title work. But Kevin can be involved all the way right up to the finish, maybe communicating back and forth between, as a liaison between the bank, the actual lender, and the title company. I'm sure that you've had things that have gone up right back and forth, right to the last minute, while you're kind of trying to play intermediary and ensuring that this communication is happening, because, you know, the buyer, their only contact might be you, you know, when it comes to what's happening at the bank. And I know that, you know, that can, hey, it happens right up to the last minute. Sometimes there's, who knows, there might be a document that was waiting from the buyer. Maybe the buyer needed to provide an updated bank account or statement, or who knows what that is. But officially, you own that house once the money comes in from the bank and the actual funding happens, which is usually through a wire transfer from the lender. The title company or the attorney's office will give the all clear and say, we got the money, it all came through, we can go record now, you now own your home. It's an exciting day when that happens, because it's all this anticipation, the excitement. Love this picture of this beautiful home here, because you got the cherry blossoms in this beautiful, this is probably a house that's in Williamsburg, perhaps. It is a really amazing experience, and it's such a gratifying feeling to finally be a homeowner. There's really nothing that can even you know, maybe having a child. Okay, then that's totally different. But you know, there is something really special about buying a home and actually getting to that final place where, oh my gosh, you're now a homeowner. Even if you've done it before, when you buy another home, it's exciting. Doesn't matter how many times you do it. It's an exciting process, and getting to that final closing is a really gratifying feeling. Being able to go into your home, step into that home, and know that it is yours and that you have control of it. Now you've got that American dream that's right there in front of you, and you've got your own home. Pretty special process, pretty special experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, this has been great, John.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for your time. If you want to get in touch with Kevin, we've got his contact information is right up here. Kevin is, hey, you know what, Kevin, thank you so much for your service. You know, I see you're an Army veteran, and I look forward to bringing you, you know, an opportunity to do some VA loans for our veterans out there. You are right here. Where's your office? Tell us where your office is.
I'm actually in Williamsburg. For those familiar with Williamsburg, it's kind of on the western side of town, up by Home Depot and Lowe's and Santerra Hospital. And anybody interested in getting information on the financing side, you're welcome to call me, text me, shoot me an email, or hop right on to my secure website at loanswithkevin.com.
Absolutely. We'll make sure that those links go into the information on the description on the video. My name is John Polson, Homes and Land by John. I'm with Mid-Atlantic Residential. You can see my phone number is right up here as well. Kevin and I are here to walk you through this process, and really, what sounds like is complicated, we really like to be able to simplify it down for you and walk you through to from start to finish, so that you can feel that gratification of owning your own perfect home that's right for you. So lastly, if you listen through this video is being recorded. So if you're not here live, you can actually have the opportunity to watch through the video. If you get through the end of this video, thank you so much. Congratulations. All you need to do now is be able to send us a private message through Messenger, or you can send it through email. You'll be fine if you send it through email. What we need from you, which is really just our thanks for actually watching through this video, learning with us, helping us to share this information so that you can be informed. We need your name, your phone number, and an email address. What we would be able to do for you is offer you for the home buying experience. I will be able to offer you a free home warranty, which is a $500 value. A home warranty is a really nice thing to have when you buy a home. It protects all your mechanical components of that home. And Kevin, we got in here that there's a possibility of getting an appraisal credit.
Absolutely.
All right.
Credit up to $500 towards appraisal or other closing costs credited at closing.
So we just want to be able to hear from you and know what we can do to help you. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch through this video. Folks, Kevin and I are live on Facebook on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. So you're welcome to join us there. You're welcome to reach out to us at any point in time. If you have any questions about mortgages or real estate, we're here to help you in the Williamsburg Peninsula area of Virginia. And even if you're looking at homes or property or financing needs outside of that area, we're here as your experts to give you guidance and assistance at any stage of the process, basically wherever you are in Virginia. So look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your time tonight. And really appreciate your bringing this information for us.
Awesome. Thanks for hosting.
All right, absolutely. All right, we're going to close this out, guys. Have a great night. And we will talk to you again very, very soon. Look forward to helping you with your real estate needs. Thanks, Kevin.